Greetings, Algebra 1 people, and welcome to our final video before we're going to do an assessment on this stuff. But we're going to first learn how to solve quadratics with two terms. I think on Manga High, they call this solving trinomials with two terms, and I think that's just like, that doesn't make any sense. If it's got two terms, it's not a trinomial. It might be a quadratic, but it's not a trinomial because tri means three, and if there's two terms, there's not three. So anyways, here's the idea for solving these, though. Suppose that I had something like 2x squared plus x equals 0. Now, we've already kind of talked a little bit about what happens when there's not an x term, but here, let's talk a little bit about what happens when your constant is 0, so that you just have an x squared term and an x term set equal to 0. And when we do these, what we want to do is we want to factor out something that's common here. Oops, I'm missing something there. We want to factor out something that's common. So for this one, we're going to look at this and say, what do these two things have in common? And what they have in common is an x. I could factor out an x from both this term and from this term. So we're going to factor out the common factor. And if I took 2x squared and divide by x, I'd get 2x, since x times 2x is 2x squared. And if I divided x by x, I would get a 1. And I have to write that 1 there. X divided by x is not 0. It doesn't go away. It's 1. So when I factor those, they're still equal to 0. And then, just like we said before, the zero product property says that the only way I can multiply two different things together and get 0 is if one or both of them were 0. So I'm going to set them equal to 0. I'm going to set x equal to 0, and I'm going to set 2x plus 1 equal to 0. This one's already done. Hey, x equals 0. There's one of my roots, one of my zeros, one of the places where the graph would cross the x-axis. Here's the other one, though, at 2x plus 1. So I've got to say, well, let's get rid of our 1 from my left side. So I'll subtract it from both sides. And that's going to leave me with 2x is equal to negative 1. And then I can divide both sides by 2 to get x is equal to a negative 1/2. So here's one solution. There's one solution. Ta-da, that's it. Let's take a look at this problem up here. Again, we're going to look for anything that these two might have in common. Last time they just had an x in common. This time, looks like they have a 2x in common. So I'll factor that out. If I divided 4x squared by 2x, I'd get 2x, since 2x times 2x would give me 4x squared. And if I divided my negative 2x by 2x, I'd get a, oops, not a plus. Come on, Mr. Fokin. Got to use your brain today. I'd get a negative 1, since 2x times negative 1 would give me negative 2x. What's our next step? Set each factor equal to 0. So I'm going to set 2x equal to 0, and I'll set 2x minus 1 equal to 0. Here, we can divide both sides by 2 to get x equals 0. And over here, I could add 1 to both sides and then divide by 2 to get x equals 1/2. Okay? Makes sense? Hope so. Let's see how Manga High questions us about this stuff. See, it says, I think that's goofy. It says, solve trinomials with 2 terms. And I'm saying, if it was really a trinomial, it would not have 2 terms. But let's see how they go about this. When you expand this parentheses, every term inside the parentheses would be multiplied by 2. That's true enough because they're going to take and distribute the 2 through. So they'll do 2 times 3x, and then they'll do 2 times negative 2. So 2 times 3x is 6x, and 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. Boom. Complete the factoring of each expression. All right, so if I had 4x minus 2 and they took a 2 out, we have to take 4x and divide by 2 to get 2x, and then we're going to take negative 2, divide by 2 to get negative 1. Here we're going to take a 3 out. 3x divided by 3, right, is just x, and then negative 9 divided by 3 would be our negative 3 here. Again, we're going to take a 3 out, so 9x divided by 3 is 3x, and negative 3 divided by 3 is going to give us our negative 1. When you expand this parentheses, every term inside the parentheses is multiplied by 2. So again, we're going to distribute 2 times 2x and 2 times negative 1. So 2 times 2x is 4, and 2 times negative 1 is going to give us negative 2 there. Complete the work to solve this quadratic by factoring. Now, again, we're going to look at this and say, what do they have in common? Looks to me like you could take an x out of both of those. So you can take an x out. 2x divided by x leaves you with 2. X squared divided by x leaves you with an x. And so after we've got that factored, we're going to set each factor equal to 0. So x equals 0 here. And 2x plus, or 2 plus x rather, is also going to be equal to 0. Then we want to get the x by itself, so we'll subtract 2 from both sides. 0 minus 2 is negative 2, so x equals negative 2 for our answer. X squared plus 8x equals 0. What do these two have in common? Say x. Yes, they have x in common, so we're going to factor this x out. Put that there. Set each factor equal to 0, so x is going to be equal to 0. X plus 8 has got to be equal to 0. How do we get x by itself? Well, we have to subtract an 8 to get rid of this 8, right? Well, you do one side, you got to do the other. So x equals negative 8. So we got two answers, x equals negative 8 and x equals 0. Substitute x equals 3 into each expression and evaluate. Well, if you say so. If 3 squared is 9 minus 3 is going to give us 6. I don't know why it's doing that, but 3 squared is 9 minus 3 gives us 6. 3 times 3 is 9. So, and if I took 3 minus 3, I'd get 0. So on the bottom, we got the 0. Not quite sure what that was all about, but hey, we'll move on. Complete the working to solve this quadratic equation by using factoring. So what do these have in common? They have an x. So I'm going to take an x out. When I do that, what's x squared divided by x? Yeah, that'd just be x. And what's x divided by x? That's 1. So if I take an x out, I'm going to get an x plus 1, right? Take my x out and get x plus 1. Set each factor equals 0, x equals 0, or x is going to be equal to negative 1 when I solve that one, because you'd have to subtract a 1 from both sides. Solve it. Oh my. Let's do, we got x squared plus 18x equals 0. I'm going to shift my camera down here. We got x squared plus 18x equals 0, and what we have in common is x. So x squared divided by x is going to be x, and 18x divided by x is going to be 18. And if we set each factor equal to 0, then we could subtract 18 from both sides to get x equals negative 18. So I think we got 0 and negative 18 for answers. Rush back over here. Select that one. Factor that. What do these two have in common? There's a 4x in both, so I think we should take 4x out. That'd give us this one. Okay, we're on our last one because we're on fire. We're in the extreme category. Reduce the quadratic equation to its simplest form and find a second solution for x. So what do these two have in common? They both have a 3x in common, don't they? So we're going to take that out, 3x. And give us 2 minus x. So when we solve this, we'd set 3x equal to 0, which just means that x is going to be 0 because 3 times something is 0, and it's not 3. It's got to be 0. Anyways, if 2 minus x equals 0, then we're going to get 2, right? So we can subtract 2 from both sides, but then we're going to have like a negative x equals negative 2, and then divide by negative 1 to get a positive 2. And we're all the way through. All right, work on these on your own. Should be kind of fun, actually, but have some fun with this. Go for the gold. Have a good rest of your week, and we'll hopefully see you soon.